evening, or in the day, depending on wherever you are in the world. I would like to welcome a very special guest of honor with us, Her Excellency Markova Concepcion Jaramillo. First of all, thank you so much, Your Excellency, for gracing this platform and for taking out the time to speak to us. I would first like to read a little bit about what Her Excellency's has been doing over a vast, illustrious career. So Her Excellency Markova Concepcion Jaramillo is the permanent representative of Panama to the United Nations. Before joining her current position, she served as her country's Minister for Social Development since 2019 and presided over the National Council for Gender Parity. From 2014 to 2019, she served as Director of Social Development of Business Association Sarmase, Pacto Global Panama, which promotes corporate social responsibility. For more than 20 years, she has addressed issues related to gender, children, youth, and people with disabilities, and shaped strategic planning and public management with multilateral organizations, including the United Nations Children Fund, United Nations Development Program, International Labour Organization, European Union Inter-American Development Bank, United States Agency for International Development, and the Spanish Agency for International Development Cooperation. She holds a master's degree in gender and development from the University of Panama. Ms. Concepcion Jaramillo also completed 2 postgraduate degree programs, one in training in economic research and organization management, and another in virtual learning environments. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for being here and for taking out the time to speak to us. With this, we will we would like to show you a snippet of Her Excellency's work and learn more about the country, Panama. So I'd request Aditi to play a short video for us. Amazing. Indeed, Panama is a beautiful country, and it was really elating to see the kind of work that you've been doing, Ambassador Concepcion, in your country. So while fellows keep joining in from different time zones, we'll go ahead with the program and stick to the schedule. So, Your Excellency, I will start with asking you one question, which is that Panama being a growing state, how do you think that Panama will maintain the balance between sustainability and fast-paced economic growth?
Hello. Nice to meet you all of people in this morning. Before sharing the space on aspects of my country's economic growth and sustainability, I would like to share some initial reflection with you. The pandemic is a multifaceted crisis and our most significant global challenge in the 21st century. Based on the premise whether we can resume and accelerate economic growth in uncertain time for all of us. However, the greatest certainty we have is that the best investment should fall into the center of social development, people. As the Secretary General of the United Nations expresses, no one will be safe until we all are. Achieving a better recovery will depend on the balance between the three fundamental axes for a real sustainable development: social, environmental, and economic. All of these three axes need to be in the balance in each of these sectors in order to achieve sustainable development. The economic impact that COVID-19 has had in the Panama is comparable to the experience by most countries globally. In order to maintain a balance between sustainability and economic growth, it will be necessary to use the resources of the economic strategically to cope with the severe social and economic consequences. Panama has its government plan aligned with the 2030 development agenda. With a clear foreign policy, it has the mission of the protection national interests and the becoming a tool for economic and social development on the international scene. That said, we have to consider that these plans have had to be redefined, where existing resources have been redirected to face the pandemic and its impact. For this to happen, all actors in society must work to achieve these goals. It is time to direct and prioritize resources to prevent and combat the challenge that have already been classified in studies carried out by the international community. I would like to share the results of the 2021 World Economic Forum Global Risk Report, where it analyzes the risk of social fractures. The study highlights the existential threats that we could face in 5 to 10 years of not making immediately changes. The report estimates that we could face weapons of mass destruction, state collapse, natural resource crisis, the collapse of social country, and the collapse of multilateralism, to name a few. The pandemic has produced that the actors of the economic sector from their role understand the responsibility they have to contribute in the parallel to the community's social development. Business are not going to survive unless this happens. Finally, it is to make a joint effort from all sectors and actors of society towards a single purpose: the survival of the human being. Thank you, Arpit.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. So my next question is that how do you think that the United Nations can play a defining part in driving multinational corporations towards sustainable practices, with emphasis on healthy private-public partnerships between large organizations and the international communities like UNICEF?
Continue to promote the 10 principles of the Global Compact at the United Nations. Corporation survival is the base of recognizing that humanizing business management towards sustainability strategies based on the protection of human rights and gender approach and will be the roadmap for the new DNA. Today, during the pandemic, human resources are the key to the greater competitiveness and productivity. Alliance, if necessary, yes, are essential to moving towards a shared vision and collaboration. Either business adapt or perish. I had the opportunity to manage several projects from the private sector with the UNICEF, NGOs, and the public sector. A shared result is win-win. Promoting the protection of the children in an articulate manner has or generates more significant benefits for protecting the rights of the world children. We return to the initial point of the cooperation and the articulation of these sectors.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Now, indeed, as you said, that public-private partnerships and managing human resources is the key to development in our world. My next question relating to that is that with Latin American and Asian states, both being states with strong traditions, how do you think that culture can be used as a catalyst for social development, especially for developing countries?
Thank you, Arpit. First, recognize difference and diversities. What we must do in the first instance is to recognize the diversity and difference of population and their cultures. Recognize that there is a cultural belonging in each of our countries. If we recognize them, we are facing the first step of the recognizing their rights. From there, we can build a public policy that I have still created with a for them. Recognizing this difference is required to work on the specific needs of each region. We must build from and with the people, work with the communities, encouraging their participation in the creation of and implementation of the public policies. Example of the catalytic role of culture. In my role as Minister of Social Development of Panama, I had the opportunity to carry out social projects focused on early childhood. In this project, we moved to the indigenous region of Nove Bugle. We made rounds of consultation with the mothers about what and how to promote an early integral development with the cultural relevance. This was essential for the project's success. We already needed to understand how we could adapt it to their circumstance, adapting into their cultural reality, but above all, generation a genuine impact on the children using scientific evidence to achieve their community's expected result. This process contributes to creating public policies translated into the realities of the territory and its culture. Through participation and collective listening, it is possible to reach community response and achieve to sustainable social development. Do I take this opportunity and ask you, do we know how poverty feels and lives? So the question, can we talk about it without at least knowing and listening to those who pass it? How to make public policies only with the statistics. Mm-hmm. Behind those numbers, there are actual people with name and faces. Thank you, Arpit.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. And I think this is a message that our fellows will go with, that behind the numbers, there are actual people. And while making public policy, that's something that we should always remember. Now, for the fellows who've joined in a little late, we'll be opening up the floor for 2 questions later on after my discussion with the ambassador is open. So please prepare yourself for that. But my next question for you, Ambassador, is related to international relations. And the question is that with rising bipolarity in the United Nations discourses, how can countries like Panama and further regions like Latin America as a collective ensure that the act of balancing power and international cooperation is not superseded by unilateral goals and aims of large states.
Some problems transcend borders. The survival of each country is the survival of the planet. We do not have planet B. Mm-hmm. The survival of each country will depend on the capacity of the negotiation and dialogue that take place in the high-level forums of the space to aspire the global unity. It is easy to preserve power disputes, but this is the moment in which we must work together to fulfill the transformation that the world requires. I reiterate that with international cooperation, we can win and advance in the global and interdependent world. We must also make intelligent decisions. The question is, are we prepared to do so? Dialogue and consensus between large and small countries are the necessary instruments in the new context. They become the most valuable tools to generate a win-win between nations. Good relation and cooperation between Panama and the world's nations should be promoted based on sovereignty, independence, and mutual respect. Intensify efforts for regional alliance that allow us to face the social challenges of our nation successfully. In conclusion, progress must be made in the debates around the consolidation of an international system at the service of peace, justice, and understanding, placing the human being at the center of our action.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think what you talked about, rule of law, democracy, negotiations, and respecting each country's sovereignty, I think that is the only way to go, rather than all of the acts of balancing powers and nations trying to pull the global agenda in their own way. Now, my last question to you, Your Excellency, is that the United Nations mandate is absolutely enormous. It's doing a lot of things at the same time. But is there any particular issue that's recently risen in importance, perhaps as a byproduct of the pandemic, that the UN might devote more attention to in 2021 and after?
Just in the recent years, the countries in the world have globalized many things. Today, we need to globalize solidarity and focus on the central role of the global recovery process, the human being. I repeat.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for answering these questions. Now, I think, as you had agreed, and I know that you're short on time, we just have half an hour with you today. So we'll open it up for the audience, and we are joined by Ms. Rosa Brooks, who's interning with the...
I repeat.
Yes, Ambassador.
Please, I would like to share with you my speech. I prepared this for sure. And finally, formulate two questions for me, please. Is possible?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, it's very important. Okay.
Absolutely.
Bueno, thank you, the authority present, Assistant Professor Upasana Singh and Professor Ishon Chartubedi. It's a pleasure to speak at the opening of the great event in the Global Policy Diplomacy and the Sustainability Fellowship. Events like these are essential because young professional priorities continue their academic training with the new tools and new visions that give a way to the generation of the new leadership, one that is in the new context of the 21st century and that change the new paradigms that we face in this world. I want to thank the organizer for inviting me to be part of this conference. It is a pleasure for me to have this space with you. Through my professional career, I have dedicated myself to public service, academia, the private sector, international organizations, which is why this topic reconnects my both to my beginnings and aspiration and inspires me to provide the best of myself for new generations. I must say that the biggest project of my life has been and we continue to be the training of my 20 years old daughter, Andrea de las Mercedes, who currently is studying psychology in Canada. Living as a global citizen who is empathic with the world current needs is one of the most significant legacies. I extend my greetings to all the academics and activists who are joining us today on this event. I would like to start with some point of reflections. We have an infinitive capacity for adaptation. It is within us. Often, when we face change, we resist it. However, we have the opportunity to be adaptable. The best way to develop adaptability is by stepping out of the comfort zone. By moving out of the zone and into the stretch zone, we can build adaptability, just like you, who saw the opportunity to continue education yourself, even during uncertain times. As the COVID-19 pandemic progressed, many people automatically enter in the panic zone. This may not have happened immediately, but it built up over time as daily news updates fed our knowledge and experiences. When this is combined with the genuine concern about everyday life and livelihoods, it provides a perfect recipe for developing a resistance to change. By constantly entering the stretch zone and leaving our comfort zone, we can begin to adapt our life, routine, works, education, a vision of the life to the new environment. From there, we can create new and exciting opportunities. It is a journey, a constant awareness of the here and now. 2020 helped us reflect and put everything we knew and what we saw differently from ourselves in perspective. I made us appreciate the gesture that we consider every day in the life we led before COVID-19. Experts say that the world will no longer be the same, hopefully so after the pandemic. Confidently, we can create a world where new social contracts are built, where a new reality is shaped. It is time to build agreement that manage to exclude the vulnerable and even those who have not always perceived themselves as human beings with rights. This ideal will not happen unless there are actions of the part of governments and broad participation or actors representing different groups and society. This action must establish dialogue and coordination mechanisms to reach agreements that reflect the community collective imagination and commit the actors that comprise it. There is a phrase that the linguistic Noam Chomsky said, I would like to share with you. If we want to change things, it will have to be through cooperation, solidarity, community, and collective commitment. It is the moment when we most promote harmonious and collaborative work among nations. Society needs to be humanized through the generation of citizens and even decision makers who are more empathetic and supportive. Priorities collective well-being by generating public value. Dimension, the personal scope as human beings, we are to satisfy basic needs focused on values and respect between us. As public servants, we must recognize the opportunity that the pandemic offers us to transform the reality we have and improve it. The values and experience produced as a result of the crisis must be translated into the public policies that are inclusive and focused on the sustainable human development. It is necessary to adopt a sustainability approach that involves all the agencies of each government. Heads of the state must declare the application of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, a priority and consider that the general framework of public policies to create national strategy for sustainable development. Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, said that now is the time to secure the well-being of the people, economies, societies, and our planet. It is possible, so we must make it happen together. It is essential to recognize that the application of the 2030 Agenda is not just a matter of improvements in the existing public policies. The effectiveness of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda requires changes in governance and power structures. This will depend on the existence to stable, democratic, and transparent public institutions at the national and international levels. They are priority attention group that we have to take into account when formulating public policies. It is necessary to develop public policies with a human rights approach, taking into account the incorporation of the gender mainstreaming perspective at all levels. Progress for the protection of the women's rights has been vast and extensive and shaped with many violations of their rights and struggle to achieve most of their demands. In society, there are still obstacles lying to the legislation and culture, which can translate into undervaluation of women participation in different settings, such as the participation of women in the productive sphere, with less participation in decision-making positions. Addressing the tremendous social, economic, and cultural, environmental, and political challenge will certainly require that women participation be recognized as vital to contribute their full potential development. In both developed and developed countries, we find women who bear a disproportionate burden of the unpaid care work. This translates into a lack of time for employment and livelihoods, education, vocational training, and consequently public life participation. Health, sexual and reproductive rights are also an essential part of the women empowerment and social inclusion. Many women and girls also face multiple and interrelated forms of discrimination based in age, ethnicity, indigenous status, and migrants. So how can growth and development be made more inclusive for women? During my years of professional experience, I have been able to identify that decisive action is required at all levels to develop and implement laws and policies that integrate the gender perspective into the public policies. This is a requirement to contribute to women empowerment, which will then promote sustainable human development. If we are half of the population, we need to be made visible in decision making. No country can reach its full potential without doing that. Women must be able to participate in decisions that directly impact their life. By doing this, these barriers and discrimination that stand in the way remove. Another of the priority attention groups are people with disability. Their percentage of the world population, which is often forgotten by system and the public policies. Nothing about us without us. This motto was often repeated in New York during the UN International Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The rights of all to participate in the society on an equal base should be the main focus. Our work in the ready to work for the full inclusion of people with disability in all aspects of society. Discrimination against people with disability must be combated in all areas. I have a complete hearing disability in my left ear acquired in my 30s. I understand the importance of having more space in decision-making for a more inclusive world. It is necessary to open positions for decision-making to professionals who have some disability, recognizing their capacities and contribution to development will produce varied public policies that contemplate the protection of people with disability human rights. During the COVID-19, we have faced a pandemic that has been snowballing for decades. The pandemic war, exclusion, poverty, discrimination, the pandemic of the climate crisis, the pandemic of the confined living, major sequels and deepening existing gaps. The pandemic has shaken all structures and has accelerated and innovation. Diplomacy and multilateral systems are no exception. In this context, diplomats face multiple challenges, which cover a wide range of elements, including the remodeling of communication protocols and the need to continue our negotiation work virtually, the impossibility of the meeting face-to-face and product of sanitary measures that seek to preserve human life has required an accelerated transformation of the diplomatic work management as we know it. Representatives of the large and small delegation have gathered in front of their screen and are negotiating in completely new environment involving an accelerated rate. I believe that we are witnessing the emergency of a new specialized diplomacy, which require more technical knowledge and innovative thinking that driven by scientific evidence. There is no doubt that the governments make a significant effort to respond to the challenge imposed by the 21st century. This situation has required that decision makers use creativity and innovation as tools to have a rapid response during the crisis. The need for the new leadership by decision makers must be recognized where opportunities are detected within disruptive moments. The role of delegation in multilateral centers become more prominent and permanent missions are called open to collaborate with specialized organizations to search for solutions. It is imperative to maintain multilateralism momentum as we must show us the way to recovery. During the last the UN asked people worldwide about the hopes and fears for the future. Also, about their expectations and ideas for international cooperation, especially for the UN. More than 1,900 countries participated. The exercise was the UN's most ambitious effort to date to gather information from the public in the global spheres and the most extensive survey on the priorities for recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General, said that the UN Global Consultation showed that 97% of those surveyed support international cooperation to address global challenges that represent a firm commitment to the multilateralism and the mission of the United Nations. Now, it is up to us, the member state and the UN Secretary, to meet the expectation of the people we serve. In the end, multilateralism and diplomacy will continue to play a vital role in the fight against the pandemic. Simultaneously, the promotion of the cooperation and solidarity will be fundamental pillars of the global response to our shared challenges. It is necessary to promote international cooperation and solidarity, which is the only way to win this battle in the face of the world new challenge. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink said, "The pandemic triggered the worst global economic contraction since the Great Depression and the steepest decline in equity markets since 1987. Humanity going through essential decisions from the survival of human beings and the planet. I ask you, what is you will do to contribute to the planet's sustainability? I'm sure that there is much to do. I invite you I invite you to live a life of purpose. For estimate, it is easy to recognize that economic growth is essential. However, this is the moment to acknowledge the impact the pandemic has caused at the social level. It will be necessary to use the resources of the between sustainability and economic growth. In this speech, I have addressed the need to adapt the new realities about creating public policies that seek inclusion. However, I must point out that our resilience and knowledge management capacity is being put to the test, which is good news. We have been taken out of our comfort zone. We each one to other. Do not expect your neighbor or the other to do so. Ask yourself, what can I do? And what am I doing to achieve a world of peace? Choosing the profession of servant must always plan a better future for our communities. Plan this regardless of the context and beyond that. Question ourselves how we can achieve it. We can find the answer to all these questions if we listen, if we maintain an empathetic attitude. Following analogy your decisions from now on in all professional and personal levels. Let's say you decide to climb Mount Everest. What do you need to do so? Be disciplined, train, prepare mentally and physically to climb more than 8,000 meters, the world's highest mountain. Sometime that will be very important as professional citizen decision makers or Mount Everest climbers. You must learn how to go up and down a mountain like Everest of your life. The paths will be full of obstacles, which will, in the end, be your best allies. As what can I learn from each challenge that arises? And the route of that you will travel in your life or to Mount Everest, either of them shall cover it in case you don't have it yet. Dear professional, there is still a long time to go before we can enter the post-COVID-19 period and the global unity, be the engine of the change for a more my best wishes. Thank you. Thank you, Arpit and professors.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. This was a really inspiring speech. And, from the topics that you touched about, if one nation is not secure, then the whole world is not secure. The emphasis on making leadership more inclusive, to include people with special needs or disabilities or people from underserved populations, that is the key to development. So Mount Everest, what should you do right now, and start thinking about that. I think that sort of a goal-oriented approach is what we need, and we are really happy that we are joined by a stellar set of fellows who embody some of these values. And as we go ahead with the fellowship and with its vast amount of mentorship sessions, we will learn a lot more about from the fellows, and hopefully the fellows will be able to learn from each other. And with that, I would now throw it open to the fellows. Her Excellency has agreed to take 2 questions. And although in your mentorship sessions in the fellowship, you'll have the opportunity to ask a lot more questions from people. But right now, with the paucity of time, we'll invite just 2 fellows. So if you could raise your hands, Miss Rosa Brooks, who is an intern with the permanent mission of Panama at the United Nations, will be translating the questions to the ambassador while the ambassador answers to your questions in Spanish. So over to you. So if the audience, anybody has a question, you might want to raise your hand and we'll unmute you. All right. So I see Jonathan.
I think
Cummings.
Yeah, Jonathan and Tanisha, both of them have a question.
All right. So Jonathan, why don't you go ahead? And I think Jonathan, after Jonathan, if we could take Parikshit, because Parikshit is from the new cohort of the fellows, and I can see his hands raised. So Jonathan, you'd like to go first, and then we'll take Parikshit's. And I'll just unmute you. Yeah.
All right. All right. Thank you, Arpit, and thank you, Your Excellency, for being here. So, as Arpit mentioned to you a while back, I'm on the steering committee for the Alliance for UN South-South Cooperation. And so, you know, we try to advocate a lot for NGOs and CSOs in the Global South. So my question to you isn't completely related to that, but my question to you is, what do you think is going to happen in 2030? Like, you know, the UN Sustainable Development Goals are aimed, the target is to do their best to achieve everything by 2030. But when 2030 comes around, I know right now it's a decade of action, a decade of youth, and decade of action to really push these goals forward. But by 2030, what do you see as your vision? What do you think is going to happen by then?
Embajadora, básicamente lo que le están diciendo, el que está hablando ahorita mismo es una persona que es muy advocada a todas todos los NGOs y todo lo que se trata con esto, y básicamente la pregunta puntual es, ¿cuál es su visión? ¿Qué es lo que usted ve pasando en el 2030, tomando en cuenta la agenda multilateral que se tiene en los países ahorita mismo por parte del desarrollo? O sea, ¿qué es lo que usted ve pasando? ¿Cuál es su visión?
Okay, thank you for the question. Primero, y lo voy a mencionar en puntos, bullets. Okay, first. Definitivamente la pandemia ha producido un retroceso en los avances de los SDGs. Translate, Rosa. O sea, vamos con phrase.
So she's going to divide her answer in different bullets. So the first point that she wants to make clear is that definitely after the pandemic, all of the SDGs goals have been a little bit backwards, basically. So that is the first point that she wants to make clear.
Si queremos acelerar los esfuerzos para el cumplimiento de los SDGs, necesitamos que los gobiernos o los Estados miembros generen mejores inversiones más focalizadas y más eficientes.
Okay, so her second point basically is that if we want to see a real advance in the SDGs, we need to have more of a focalized investments in each of the sectors to actually create a balance and an advance in the SDGs.
Importante para poder avanzar hacia el logro de los SDGs, necesitamos focalizar y priorizar las acciones de todos los sectores y trabajar de forma coordinada y mancomunada.
She said the need to focalize and to redirect the resources that we find in the economy to those SDGs. That's the only way that this could happen.
El sector privado, la academia, la sociedad civil o los NGOs necesitan trabajar de forma articulada. Hemos podido identificar resultados exitosos en la medida que la cooperación y la articulación sucede entre los sectores. Y ese va a ser una herramienta para poder avanzar hacia esos SDGs en el año 2030. Entonces, necesitamos voluntad de los gobiernos, voluntad política y voluntad de los sectores de priorizar un trabajo coordinado hacia el cumplimiento de la agenda.
Okay, so she says that the only way 2030's goals can be implemented is the work of the entire sectors, of all the sectors, academia, the private sector, NGOs, all of them working in conjunction to actually make the 2030 agenda happening. So basically cooperation among all of the sectors.
Quiero resaltar algo importante. Alcanzar un verdadero desarrollo humano sostenible requiere que la mitad de la población participe en la toma de decisiones. Los problemas estructurales de nuestros países requieren reducir las brechas de discriminación y la exclusión de las poblaciones que están fuera del desarrollo. Entonces, mi visión hacia el 2030 implica que tenemos que incorporar todo el potencial para poder acelerar también los esfuerzos. No es solamente un tema de inversión, es un tema que incluye reducir los gaps, reducir las brechas, reducir la discriminación, reducir la discriminación, reduce discrimination, para poder entonces movernos hacia el cumplimiento de la meta. El desarrollo no va a producir eliminación de las brechas. Tenemos que eliminar las brechas para poder producir desarrollo.
Okay, so she basically says that she envisioned 2030 happening in the way that if we actually accomplish all of the sectors working together is the only way to actually accomplish a human development. And that is, that has to happen through the elimination of discrimination, the elimination of the reason or the actual gaps that we have in all our regions. And that has to translate, or that would actually implies a work between all of the sectors.
Okay.
Y finalmente a la pregunta, tenemos que centrar en el core del desarrollo a la gente. Y la gente pasa por un tema económico y ambiental. Entonces, tenemos que mantener el equilibrio en los tres elementos de la sostenibilidad.
She says that also she envisioned 2030 having a balance between all of the three axes, socially, economically, and environmentally, because all of these things are conflicts that we are facing right now, and we will face further in the 2030.
Y creo que también debe ir acompañado en todos los países del mundo el fortalecimiento de las instituciones públicas, de la gobernanza y de la participación ciudadana. Alcanzar los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible debe implicarnos a todos los sectores, inclusive a los ciudadanos.
She says that also the way to happen, or for this to happen, is to create the social or civil social participation and strengthening of the actual government institutions that we have right now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for answering the question posed by Jonathan. So guys, we have time for one more question. So Parikshit, I'll just unmute you, and why don't you go ahead?
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Excellency, Arpit and Ishan. And my question, I was just curious, since you've addressed problems in the disability space, I was just curious if you can throw some light on how do we reboot disability sports, because it involves a lot of volunteering muscle, and with COVID-19, it's very difficult to adhere to social distancing norms. So I was just curious, how do you see the way forward to reboot disability sports? Any thoughts, if you can?
Básicamente, embajadora, él quiere saber su visión acerca de cómo ahorita mismo se puede incluir la disabilidad en la agenda tomando en cuenta que en este momento en el mundo por la pandemia nosotros tenemos las distancias sociales. O sea, él solamente quiere saber como su opinión al respecto. ¿Cómo se puede trabajar esto a pesar de que seguimos en pandemia? ¿Cómo se puede incluir a las personas con disabilidad?
Con discapacidad.
Con discapacidad.
Ah, ok. Ah, es que no había entendido la pregunta. Ok, ¿cómo incluimos a las personas con discapacidad en el proceso de desarrollo? En el marco de todo el tema en el contexto de pandemia. Ok. Primero hay que tomar la decisión. Hay que tomar la decisión. Los gobiernos y los sectores tenemos que tomar la decisión, la firme decisión y la voluntad de inclusión. Si no, no va a ocurrir. Segundo, a través de la educación. Tenemos que romper los paradigmas y los prejuicios que imposibilitan una incorporación de las personas con discapacidad en todos los sectores. Obviamente, la pandemia afecta más a los grupos a los grupos prioritarios con mayores dificultades de participación. Por lo tanto, lo que necesitamos es, vuelvo y repito, decisiones institucionales de los gobiernos que implementen políticas públicas de inclusión social para las personas con discapacidad. Vamos con ese primer punto, Rosa.
Okay, el primer punto. Okay, so the first point, of that the ambassador wants to make, it is the need of the willingness of the government and the governmental structures to actually make public policies that seek to include people with disabilities. That is the first thing that we have to accomplish.
Yo quiero aprovechar y transmitirles algo. Cualquiera de los que estamos aquí en este panel, en cualquier momento de la vida podemos adquirir una discapacidad. Yo no tenía ninguna discapacidad. Yo adquirí una discapacidad a mis 35 años.
Okay, so
sí, dale.
She wants to basically make sure that you get this final message. Whoever in any particular part of their life without even expecting it can acquire a disability. She is explaining how she acquired disability on her hearing on the left ear, total disability, and she acquired that in her 30s without really expecting it. So she wants to make sure that point it is clear.
Y no es hasta ese momento que podemos comprender y a medida que seamos más empáticos, ponernos en la posición de las personas con discapacidad. Yo creo que hay algo importante también. Hay que trabajar, menciónalo, hay que trabajar desde la educación con una visión inclusiva. Eso es importante. Una visión inclusiva en la educación debe producir cambios desde muy temprana edad. Entonces, y aquí hay algo importante para todos. La discriminación se construye porque es un constructo social, porque es un proceso de socialización. Nadie nace discriminando. Yes,
Okay, so the other point she wants to make is that social inclusion has to be a part of the agenda in education. So through education, we can battle all of these things in a very early age. And she wants to say also that discrimination is a social construction. So nobody actually is born a racist or is born a bad person. These things are taught, and that's how the ambassadors see it, how the education can actually play a big role when kids are still in school.
Y lo más importante, las personas con discapacidad tenemos la posibilidad de aportar al desarrollo humano de nuestros países. No utilizar esas capacidades es no utilizar de forma inteligente herramientas para poder mejorar el desarrollo de nuestros países. O sea, que tenemos que aprovechar las capacidades y las potencialidades de las personas con discapacidad para que contribuyan también al desarrollo. Eso, al igual que la perspectiva de género, aumenta el PIB, aumenta la producción de los países. Y más allá de eso, estamos hablando de protección de los derechos humanos básicos de las personas.
Okay, so one of the last points that the ambassador would like to make is that we have in every single country in the world, we have to see the capabilities of people with disabilities. Because if we don't do that, this won't translate in the gross domestic product or the potential that we are basically not taking advantage of all their capabilities. So that is basically a loss for us if we don't give them the space to actually act upon the human development structure. They are part of it.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your answers and for being so gracious with your time with us today.
Sí, pregunta si hay alguien que más quiere, porque creo que vi alzando a alguien la mano, que puedo recibir otra pregunta si ellos tienen a bien. Si hay alguien más que quiere preguntar para no dejarlo sin contestar.
Okay, Arpit, the ambassador is saying that she's willing to actually answer more questions if someone
okay.
else.
Yes, so I think Nikunj had a question. So Nikunj, I'm going to unmute you now.
Hello, Nikun.
Good evening, Madam Ambassador. First of all, thank you so much for offering your incredible and insightful ideas and thoughts around space of social justice, which I'm particularly passionate about. At this point of time, I would love to draw your experience as former Minister for Social Development through my question. So one of the 6 inequalities as detailed, vertical inequalities as detailed by United Nations is inequality in the distribution of opportunities for civic and political participation. And I would love to know from your experience as Minister for Social Development, how different governments, civil society organizations can reduce this inequality, especially in the light of COVID-19, where this has further exacerbated because the avenues for civic and political participation has reduced across the world. Thank you so much.
Embajadora,
Sí.
el joven básicamente lo que le pregunta es, desde su perspectiva como ministra
Sí.
de Desarrollo Social en Panamá, hay una inequalidad, o sea, una inequidad básicamente en la participación de la sociedad civil en espacios políticos. Entonces, en su experiencia como ministra, él quiere saber cuáles serían sus recomendaciones para entonces disminuir esta brecha.
La brecha la brecha de la reducción de participación de la sociedad civil en los procesos de toma de decisiones.
Exacto, exactamente.
Dile que es una pregunta muy inteligente, primero.
So she first wants to say that it is a very, very good question to ask.
Ninguna sociedad puede avanzar si no incluimos todas las visiones de todos los sectores para alcanzar o definir un propósito de país. Comienza ahí.
Okay, so she says basically that there is no real development if we actually exclude some of the more important voices in civil society. This cannot happen. Development cannot go through if we don't have all sectors participating in democracy.
Y no estaríamos hablando de una real democracia si no escuchamos todas las voces y todos los pensamientos diversos frente a los temas más importantes de nuestros países.
And we won't really have a democracy unless we hear the voices of all the diversities of opinion in our country.
Ok, la pregunta, ¿cómo hacerlo? Hay una responsabilidad de los tomadores de decisiones. Y lo he transmitido a lo largo de todo el speech. Los tomadores de decisiones tenemos la responsabilidad de abrir los espacios para que esa participación ocurra. Porque entonces no estaríamos... Tenemos que generar una pertenencia en esa participación para poder entonces gestionar el desarrollo en los países.
Okay, so what she's been mentioning throughout her speech also is how to do it, is how we can accomplish all of these things. And she said that the first responsible to do this is government institutions or decision makers. They have to open these spaces where civil society can also raise their voices, and these have to be translated then into start public policies by hearing the people, by hearing their needs.
Estaríamos hablando de una democracia incompleta si no escuchamos todas las voces.
She said that we've been, or we would be talking about an incomplete democracy if we're not hearing or we're not giving these public spaces for civil society to participate.
Pero hay otro punto importante. La ciudadanía, los ciudadanos tienen la responsabilidad de exigir esos espacios.
Okay, the other thing that she says is that the responsibility of the government is one thing, but also the citizens, they also have a responsibility to demand these spaces to the decision makers of their countries. So right now she's making sure that you get the two responsibles for this to happen. Decision makers and citizens.
Y quienes nos representan, o sea, los tomadores de decisiones, están ahí sentados por procesos democráticos de elección en nuestros países. Entonces, ¿quién es? Nos pudiéramos ir a la parte histórica. Nosotros le damos el voto a los tomadores de decisiones, nosotros le damos voto a los políticos, pero necesitamos exigir accountability, transparency, and other things en las instituciones. O sea, nosotros los ciudadanos o la sociedad, los ciudadanos tienen que exigir a los gobiernos. Y es donde tenemos que, y ahí viene una parte importante de todos ustedes, y es que tenemos que empoderarnos para que ustedes, al llegar a toma de decisiones, lo hagan correcto, pero si son ciudadanos, también lo hagan correcto.
She said that it is very important, and she wants to leave this message with you guys, is that we as citizens, we have to empower ourselves. That whenever we get to these places where we can make decisions, we have to make it knowing that the people who put us in these places are people who voted for us. So we as society, we have to demand transparency and accountability to all of these institutions, because historically we are the ones who are putting all of these people in position. So she wants you guys to see the necessity of empowering ourselves as citizens. We do have a responsibility in this whole entire thing.
Thank you, Grace.
¿Alguien más?
Arpit, she says that if another question, she will be happy.
Dile que me
to
voy
answer.
emocionando. Dile que me voy emocionando.
She's very passionate about the topic, so she is, involving herself in all of this. So she will be happy to answer more questions, you guys.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I think we have one more question from Tanisha and from Ishan. So Tanisha, do you want to go ahead first if you're there?
Hello, thanks so much for the opportunity to ask you questions. It's been such a pleasure hearing you speak. My question was, you've had such an illustrious career in public service, international relations. So I was wondering how you think the public policy space has changed over the past few decades, and what advice you would have for people looking to enter the industry as students or young professionals.
Embajadora, ella quiere saber básicamente cuáles son sus consejos para las personas que son profesionales jóvenes, pero que también quieren entrar al sector de tomar decisiones, de trabajar en políticas públicas. ¿Cuál sería tu consejo para ellos?
Le voy a dar el consejo que me dio mi padre cuando tenía 20 y pico de años, en mi década de los 20, en la cual él ha sido en su vida profesional profesor y político. Y me dijo lo siguiente, y este es el consejo que le puedo transmitir. 1, ¿cómo quieres entrar en política? Haciendo logística, pegando papel, pegando pancartas. Esa es una opción. La otra opción es con el conocimiento, estudiando, preparándose.
Okay.
Y yo tomé el camino de estar permanentemente preparándome como ustedes, estudiando conociendo, investigando, siendo profesora universitaria, siendo investigadora con investigaciones a nivel de la cooperación internacional. La mejor manera desde mi punto de vista personal es a través del conocimiento, porque las mejores decisiones basadas en evidencia científica lo van a requerir los políticos, los buenos políticos. Entonces, esa sería mi sugerencia. Y no olvidar que el servicio público es para servir, no es para servirnos. Y creo que lo pudimos transmitir en el video inicial.
Okay, so she has one person that very early on in her life basically gave her the same advices that she wants to transmit to all of you. So it was her father that while she was in her 20s, he asked her the questions, how do you want to be in politics, or how do you want to serve? Do you want to be in logistics of the political sphere? Do you want to be placed in the advertisements, or do you want to do it through knowledge? Do you want to do it through a real understanding on how to do public policies and how to be a politician? So her sincere advice to you guys is to go through education. She says that she keeps educating herself through being a professor, through seeing data, through seeing statistics, and to have these discussions with you guys that also keeps her broadening her knowledge. So that is the main advice that she wants to give to you guys. And also another message that she wants to say, it is the importance to know that whenever you go to a public service career, it is that we are there to serve. It is not for serving us, but the other way around. We choose this profession to serve people, not that the people serve to our purposes. So that is very important.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador. With this, we'll come to an end of our time today. And from the side of GPODs, I want to say that we could not have said this better. You have communicated this message to our fellows that they should pursue the path of education. And that's what we are here for. And we would love to have you and invite you over again to interact with our fellows and truly we are and
a cada uno de ustedes. Thank you so much.
You have a good day too, Ambassador. And for our fellows, we'll be looking forward to seeing you. We'll also be adding you to a Slack group. Please do, etc.
Cualquiera de los estudiantes quieren escribirme y consultarme, con muchísimo gusto. Rosa.
Thank you. So she basically is here, so feel her.
Yes. I am a professor.
That is really gracious of you. Thank you so much, Professor.
Okay, thank you.
So much, Ambassador.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for making
Bye
this
bye.
so seamless for us.
Ishan.
Yes, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Ishan.
No, my pleasure, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you to all of the GPODs fellows. We are really excited to have you all. Now, I do also take this time to make a couple of informal announcements. One is that We are extremely glad to have all of you. I know that we've already, some of the fellows have written to us that they might not be able to join this call because of time zone and everything. We look forward to seeing all of you on the 7th. And we'll also establish a WhatsApp group. You have our personal IDs and our contact numbers, so please feel free to get in touch with all of us. One of the things that we really value is the bond that we would create over the next 3 months. On the 20th of this month, you have an informal session with the past fellows, and you'll see that everyone becomes a really good friend over the next 3 months. So I look forward to knowing all of you a lot better over the coming months. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you on the 7th.
Bye-bye.